So check this out. Can you see
Yeah.
the screen?
Right.
So when you sent out the new valuation table, so what we did here was, let me expand this so you can actually see, there's a lot of data. I'm in view only. Give me a sec. Crap. All right, whatever. We'll start again. So what you sent out the latest valuation table, which contains valuations for essentially every state, right here. This is the latest.
Right.
But what we did was took this and went back to last year. When we started creating these valuations, these underlying valuation multipliers, right? So this is the multiplier from 9/20/2022, and in Alabama, right? No, sorry, Alaska. No, Alabama.
Alabama.
Alabama. Oh yes. The multiplier in 9/20/2022 was 2.85. And if you look at this, it's down in less than a year, we're down at a multiple of 2.25.
Right.
We took all of the 2022 multiples, looked at all the multiples for the last, what is this,
Year, roughly
6, 7, 8 months.
10, roughly. Yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? 9 months. So we've got 9 months worth of data here. I mean, obviously what we can see is, in most cases, a downward trend. I'm surprised, right? Florida is really surprising, frankly. That's dropped by, it's dropped down 0.5, or 0.5,
Right.
of a basis point.
Right.
So, in most places it looks like values are dropping. Now you do see also in Florida, it's kind of slightly ticked up.
Right.
Good news in Georgia, slightly ticked up, just a little bit. And where else did we see an uptick? There are
Texas, I think, had one as well, if I recall.
Yeah, and probably not as right. This is where population is going right now. Florida,
exactly. Yeah, the Sun Belt's where all the population's transferring to. Exactly.
Texas, where are we?
They're slightly up as well.
That went up again, very slightly. Tennessee, I'm kind of surprised it didn't go up, but it's, at least Tennessee is holding strong here.
Right.
It's another area where, population is going. And then we have, probably just a couple other places that have kind of held strong. South Dakota, definitely an area where there's been some migration patterns. And then North Dakota, similarly, that it's ticked up a little bit.
Right.
But by and large, we're seeing the valuation multiples across the country all, they've all dipped well below 3 on average.
Right.
And of course we know, there's seasonality to this. There's, even regional adjustments within any given state, but this makes sense. So what we then did was took this and kind of broke it out into regions. So, Midwest, South, West, Northeast, and Southwest.
Okay.
So we've got kind of a region by region, and I think this is where it gets really interesting.
Right.
Right. So can you see that okay?
Yeah.
So, this, actually, let me blow this up a tiny bit. This is where, so if I look at this region by region where it's really been moving, the South, which is this kind of blue line here, is, that's kind of leveled off.
Yeah.
A little bit better than kind of everyone else.
Right.
The Southwest, which, also includes, if we look, let me just go here. So that includes Arizona, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas.
Got it.
Okay. So that gives us a, you could see, I think out of all of this, Texas is definitely carrying it.
Oh yeah.
But everybody has dipped below this 2.5, and we're kind of, it's still, are we starting to see it level off? Maybe.
I mean,
But,
as we talked about, it's a little bit. This is going to be dependent on what the Fed does in the next, call it 3 to 6, 3 to 6 months or whatever, and that's going to be the trick. I mean, could it start to recover? Maybe, but we'll see what the interest rates do. So,
yeah, and that's the thing here, right? If I feel like anybody that we talk to, a part of that conversation really has to be around, are we, everybody still is thinking, I'm just going to hold off. I'm going to hold up, I'm going to wait it out. I'm going to see if things go back. And, I think a lot of folks are thinking about this, how long is it going to take to get back up here?
well, look, it took us, historically speaking, it's taken us, we'll call it a year for ease of numbers, taken us roughly a year to get from where we were to where we are today. You can typically double that, or maybe go at 1.5 times to get back to where you were to begin with. So it's just simple math. If it took us roughly a year to get where we are, call it 1.5 to 2 years to get back to where we were then. So are you willing to hang out that long? Do you have the money? Because the buyers want to buy up now, and you have to make that choice.
Yeah, no, and that's it. I think the danger of waiting is you end up spending an awful lot more money to try to keep your business afloat. Listings are, it hasn't gotten better. It's in fact, in many cases, it's gotten worse in most of the markets. And, you're carrying a lot more, same expenses, less transactions, less business overall.
Yeah.
And now your business is about, kind of plugging holes, as opposed to, and waiting for something that, for all intents and purposes, may not happen for another 2+ years.
Yeah.
By the time you get out of that and you get offers, there's no guarantee that your offers are going to go back up to this rate either, because, some of these, there was some artificial, like, I look at the technology side of things every day and see the money's VC funding. VCs are like, sorry, we're on the sidelines right now. We're just waiting to see what happens. Valuations have gone way the hell down, even worse than this, right? Way worse than, frankly. But the good news here is the businesses that are getting funded from venture capital are the ones that have solid business, that actually have, EBITDA, that have, actual profit and customers.
Right.
So, that's, fortunately for a lot of the folks that we talk to on the brokerage side, right? They've got businesses, they've got deals, they've got revenue, they've got profit, but they might not in 6 months. Right. Or it might just shrink more. So now I've got a multiple on a smaller profit. And so what? If I've got a higher multiple but a smaller profit, those two things counterbalance each other. So I'm right back to where I am. So if my business is worth $1 million today, a year and a half from now, it could be worth $1 million then.
Right.
And so what? And I just went through the aggravation of that.
Yeah. So, and you burned up all your cash in the process waiting. And
yeah. Oh, that's a sucky feeling.
Yeah.
So this, this one just kind of goes through everything in a little bit more, in finer detail. But you can see, right, there's no question, right? I mean, we all know this. It's just the data helps to reinforce it. And it gives you that feeling in the pit of your stomach, like, whoa, boy.
Well, it is interesting. As I'm looking at this graph, you can really begin to isolate off, how each area, although there is some similarities to be sure, they are running individually at their own sort of variable. If you look at the Midwest, for example, I mean, you can see it plain as day. It's a flatter overall curve. There's some differences in how it's laying out. The West is obviously getting hit pretty hard based on a lot of factors there, but it's an interesting set of numbers to look at for sure.
Yeah, well, in most places, it's almost been like stair steps,
Yeah.
right? Kind of levels off for a little bit and then goes down and levels off a little bit. I kind of feel like we're at that, clearly we're at that point where it looks like it's leveling off a bit, but
Right.
if it goes down even a little bit more here, even
Right.
another, 5/10, you're
Yeah.
talking about, again, on a decent sized business, on a million, $2 million, $3 million business.
Right.
Every few months you wait basically shaves off more of what you were hoping for.
Yeah.
And as we've seen, right, the deal terms are getting worse,
Oh,
right? And I
exactly.
don't want to say worse, right? But they're not as favorable.
Right.
Because we're getting into a point where there's a lot of other macro forces, right? Like, can't forget about what the heck is going on with these lawsuits. And if
Oh, yeah.
holy cow, just sat through a session on that today. And, I don't want to paint a doom and gloom picture, but it's, if the worst case happens, you're talking about 1 million+ agents
Yeah.
evacuating this industry.
Right.
Because, buy side commissions are going to be a complete
Yeah.
change from what they are today. But, the best case that happens is the industry is slapped with a whole bunch of lawsuits and still a whole bunch of change that's going to occur. And you're still going to lose, hundreds of thousands, if not 1 million agents. So, if there were a good time to really contemplate what the hell do I do next, man, timing this is it. You can't time markets. We know that, but
No.
like, yeah, I've tried.
Yeah, I know. Haven't we all?
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
But this is one of those where, like, again, fortunately, if we have history on our side a little bit here and this data to point the way, sitting there and waiting and hoping for everything to come back to normal in 6 months or something like that. I don't see it. You're to your point, we're easily a year and a half to 2 years out. And this is all based on your earnings, right? So,
and that's best case scenario. You and I've been doing this a while, it's like there's a lot of downward pressure on the market at large, and in the real estate industry as an industry and individual corporations, et cetera, et cetera. And it's one of those, if you had to prognosticate and try and guess, which obviously everybody sucks at that, or most people do anyway. I still see a lot of downward pressure. 2 years, I think, would be in my estimation, a good outcome. Yeah. And it could even be a bit longer, just based on those forces that continue to drive it downward. Could those forces come back and kind of release a little bit of pressure? Sure. But I don't, every time we turn around, there's something new that's just putting pressure down. So, the next stair step could come soon, or maybe we stay flat for a while. So,
well, yeah, something we haven't even talked about, and I don't know that everybody is really thinking about as much as potentially they should be. I was just reading, over the weekend. I tend to read a lot of the financial news, just to scare the shit out of myself. And there are hundreds of thousands of multifamily rental mortgages coming due, right? Notes on multifamily properties, and a lot of them are kind of single building or a few building owners, but then there are the ones that are big portfolios, which while everybody wants inventory to come on the market, nobody wants inventory that's coming on the market distressed. Yeah. So the financial world is trying to do everything that they can to keep to create a soft landing for a lot of those multifamily units. Right. But then there's also a lot of talk about single family rentals and short-term rentals, and the value on those portfolios is starting to diminish, and the costs on those portfolios is going up, and the return on those is going down. So, hey, could that be good news? Because, suddenly you're going to start to see more inventory come into the market, perhaps, but it could also be horrible news because we're going to start to see inventory come into the market, which is going to,
drive everything else down.
Supply, which is going to decrease, values, or even worse, it's going to be distressed inventory, which everybody said, oh, it's never going to happen again. But guess what? very real.
Yeah.
So, those macro forces that unfortunately very few companies control, are looming right now. And a lot of this stuff is going to happen between now and September. So I don't know. Would I be surprised to see some more, downward?
I would.
No,
Yeah,
I
no,
would.
absolutely. Yeah, how many times have you and I talked about this? I mean, this is a rarity in the industry, across the board of just all the downward pressures. And again, I don't want, kind of like yourself, I don't want to just paint a doom and gloom picture. The honest truth is the companies that are purchasing, the companies that are buying are still willing to come in for the right type of companies and make a good offer, make a solid offer. I mean, again, are the terms going to be great? No, I mean, that's a given. But at the minimum, for those brokers who are looking to make their exit due to a wide variety of reasons, there could be a multitude of that, there's still opportunity. But, with each passing day, I mean, how many times have we heard about a company that was 6 months ago at a 2.5 would have been worth X, and at a 1.9 now, or whatever, a 2.1, there's hundreds of thousands of dollars they lost. The waiting game didn't pay off. And,
Yeah. Well, I think we wrote about that late last year.
Yeah.
Right. I just lost $1 million by
Yeah,
waiting.
exactly.
That's the reality. I mean, these numbers could easily equate to that on a multi-million-dollar business. You could, on a $5 million business, this probably represents 700 to 700,000 to $1 million in lost opportunity. What's worse is, we're also seeing, like, I don't know, I think a lot of the financials I've been looking at, and you've probably seen it too, is you have these companies that were doing, relatively well last year, even in a very difficult environment.
Yep.
They were still pulling out decent profits,
Right.
but those profits, on a monthly basis keep getting whittled. And by a factor, 20,000 here, 25,000 there, 50,000 here. And suddenly, when you were throwing off a few $100,000 in profit annually, now you're down to 190,000 or 185,000 in profit. And on the, so your profits are shrinking and the multiple is shrinking, which is a compounding effect on your payout. Going into it, like, oh well, we've got a little bit of time, we'll wait until the end of summer.
Yeah.
Well, you look at what 3 months does.
Yeah, boy, that's no kidding. I mean, yeah, look at that. Even just January to now, or February, March to now. I mean, point one almost, 0.2 almost. That's a huge amount of money. Huge amount of money. So,
Ugh. Well, we definitely have to educate some folks on this to make sure that they realize what it means to wait around. And I don't like being pushy, and everybody's got their timing and everything else, but I think we'd be foolish not to at least help people understand this. And I think it's probably good information for us to share with anybody that's even thinking.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's, I'm talking to the choir, but that's why we do what we do. It's not about, I mean, we just want to help. It's, this is the kind of info that helps. This is the kind of info that makes people take a different perspective and change the paradigm. And if it does something, great. So
yeah, well, hopefully it doesn't scare people too much, but
well, it should, but it shouldn't.
Yeah, sometimes the reality is just it's the impetus that it takes.
Yeah, no, exactly. So good stuff.